not every good work is a good work. Not every godly work is a godly work. How can that be? Well, if you are out doing God's stuff, but the impetus that has sent you out there is something to do with just your moral code, or if you go out there and the reason really isn't because you're obeying God or for the glory of God, but more that, boy, if I do this, I'm going to feel good about myself as a moral person, then what you have done, it might have been a godly act, but it was done for an ungodly reason, and here's the thing, it will come to an ungodly end. It will not do God's work. The ends will not justify the means. Wow, that's some pretty serious stuff you're pushing there. Got anything to back it up scripturally? Well, let me throw something your way. I want to use an example. In Revelation 3:14 through 22, one of the most fascinating letters of all the letters to the churches. This thing that, boy, when you understand the background a little bit, it teaches you a whole other lesson. And of all the churches, one of the last anyway, the church in Laodicea. Now, let me just read what the letter says, and then we'll kind of go into the background a little bit here. And to the angel of the church in Laodicea write, these things says the Amen, the witness on whom you can rely and who is true, the moving cause of the creation of God. I know your works. I know that you are neither cold nor hot. Would that you were cold or hot. So because you are tepid and neither cold nor hot, I will vomit you out of my mouth. Because you say, I am rich and I have acquired riches and I need nothing, and are quite unaware that it is you who are the wretched and the pitiable one, the poor and the blind and the naked one. I advise you to buy from me gold that has been refined by fire, that you may be rich, white raiment, that you may be clothed, and that your shame of your nakedness be not openly displayed, and eye salve to anoint your eyes, that you may see. Now, who is God talking to here? Who are these people? Well, let me tell you, he's talking to some pretty impressive dudes. If you look up the commentary and you look for a theological term for Laodicea, it will say impressive dudes. Yeah, it's in there. It's a professional town. These people were world leaders in all kinds of stuff. One, they were world leaders in medicine. As a matter of fact, doctors were rock stars in these people. I don't know what that made nurses, but anyway, doctors were rock stars. You know, if you were a famous enough doctor here, you'd have your face imprinted on the coin. So they were ahead of everybody in this. They were world leaders in textiles. There was a type of black wool. Interesting, he says white raiment. They were known for this type of black wool only there. It was really soft and it was very plush, and only the rich could afford it. If you had some of this type of wool on your clothing, the people knew you were going places. It was very nice. And they were one of the few places in the world to have hot and cold running water, and because they had springs that came in. There was a hot springs and a cold springs that came down. Trouble is, if they combined, it made lukewarm water, and that's not so good. They were highly educated people. They knew stuff. They had a work ethic that was incredible. They were very self-sufficient. How self-sufficient? Well, here, just to give you a snippet, in 61 AD, there was a horrible earthquake on the Greek peninsula there. Wrecked all the cities. You know, the other cities we read about in the Bible, Ephesus and all these places, decimated by this. This is all part of Rome. So kind of like here, state of emergency, every call to Rome to come in and help them rebuild. Rome offers to rebuild Laodicea. Laodicea says, spend your money somewhere else. We'll rebuild ourselves. They were so self-sufficient. They had so many experts in everything that they would just rebuild their own city from rubble. They were that self-sufficient. Now, I want you to imagine this. You know how churches work. Imagine the church in Laodicea, like this church. What's the atmosphere of this church? Well, the culture of this church, it's made up of the people who come in here. We're all kind of a certain way, and that's it. Imagine this city. It's got world leaders in every profession. It's got highly educated people, rich people, business people, and they are the members of the church. Can you imagine? It was kind of like one of the mega churches today. Can you imagine when they started rebuilding the social program this church had? How they must have helped people. I bet you even now, if we could go back there to Laodicea and see these guys, wow, what a help crisis program these folks have going on. They were pretty impressive in that way. Now, keep this in mind. This thing happened in 61 AD. The book of Revelation, the letter written to them, was written no later than 90 AD. So somewhere within 30 years. So we're talking to the church that was so impressive and did all this wonderful stuff. And they have one great distinction to their letter. They're the only church of the 7 churches in Revelation that God had nothing good to say. What? They're the megachurch. They're the ones that are helping everybody. What? No, not one good thing to say. Not one good. All warning. But keep it in mind, in God's eyes, these people were a mess, but he hasn't given up on them. He offers them something. How is it that they're in this situation? Well, let's look at how they might fit into our drift here. These people were willing to carry out good actions. They had the money, they had the expertise, they had the ability, and they would do it in the name of God, but they were so self-sufficient, they didn't have to do it by God. And the presence of God in all that was going on in this professional place, as we look at it, the presence of God has been replaced by the accomplishments of God because they're self-sufficient. And the person of God is replaced by the ethics of God. The person of God is replaced by the ethics of God. God is no longer a person, he is a code of ethics. The relationship with God is replaced by an education of God. These people are smart people. They're well educated and they're all about being socially active. Bringing this into modern terms, a little vignette to share. I was talking a year or two back to a pastor from a place that was fit Laodicea quite well. His church was next to a college and attached to it, a well-known college. And a lot of professional people came there, including a lot of professors. Now, a very enlightened church, very rich church, very smart church. And I said, boy, you must really feel gratified there. I mean, it's limitless, all these resources you could pull from and do whatever. And he kind of got a funny look on his face. And he said, well, the truth is it's frustrating. What do you mean? I said, well, if there's a cause, if there's something that needs to, they'll invest, they'll put money on it like that, no problem. But don't ask them for their time. Don't ask them to become personally invested. They'll buy, they'll put money into it, but don't ask them to become personally invested. They're too busy with their other stuff that they're doing. The whole idea when we can become lukewarm, when our doctrine becomes what we do, that type of thing. When we have all kinds of knowledge, but that knowledge lacks any spiritual life, well, what happens? Well, on top of everything else, we become inconsistent. I'm a professional person. I'll be in the fellowship today, but don't expect to see me for another 3 months. That's not the way the church runs. God wasn't too happy with it, was he? God wasn't too happy with it. If Jesus were to say something while he was walking on this earth, he would have quoted Isaiah. In fact, he did. And here's another little tidbit of studying Scripture. You see something in the Old Testament, you pay attention. When you see something from the Old Testament quoted in the New Testament, then you really pay attention because you're into timeless truth there. And this is what Jesus said as he looked at the people who were trying to be religious in their own way. These people draw near to me with their mouth, and they honor me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. Well, then what's the result then, Jesus? Well, in vain they worship me, teaching as doctrines the commandments of men. Teaching as doctrines the commandments of men. How much and how easily that we take stuff we say and turn it into the Bible. Got to be so careful on this.